Hemp creates an opportunity to maximize home energy efficiency through more sustainable material selections and healthier building opportunities and materials, both for people and the environment. But beyond that, what opportunities are there to shift hemp towards the ability to supercharge our local economies, do workforce development, and also benefit affordable housing? Join us today to discuss this and how you can get involved. Now, before we get started, I want to remind you that support for the Green Home Institute comes from Timber HP. This is 100% made in the USA wood-based insulation that is decarbonized. Go to timberhp.com and learn more about their timber board, timber bat, timber fill, all the different ways you can blow in, add exterior rigid insulation or other rigid interior insulation to help decarbonize your projects and build better today. All right, well, welcome everyone to Hemp for Humanity, the Farm to Frame initiative. This course is brought to you by the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Today, I will be your sort of co-moderator behind the scenes here. My name is Brett Little. I'm the education manager here, part of our small but mighty team. As always, our courses are approved for multiple continuing education units, including 4 pillars of green in our certified green home professional designation under energy, materials, health, and place. AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Make sure to grab that 5-digit code from your certificate as long as you're here for the full CU hour. You'll receive that as well as the 5-digit code from ICC from your certificate, thanks to Energy Smart Institute, who you should check out for all of your energy rating trainings. So, with that, I am super excited to hand it off to our speakers here today. We have a whole group, and kind of your moderator, really, of this group. Is Cody with Hemp for Humanity, who I've got to kind of co-speak with on the Michigan Public Service Commission Low Income Energy Waste Reduction Forum and have been in touch with him since then for a while now. So it's really exciting to actually be able to finally do this session. And Cody, I'm glad to have you and your team here. And so welcome, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Brett. And it's super exciting. Thank you so much, everybody, for registering. And I'm really excited to present what we've been working on at Hemp for Humanity and launching our Farm to Frame initiative this year with the team. Yeah, so like Brett said, we're here today to talk about the Farm to Frame initiative. My name's Cody. I'm the founder of Hemp for Humanity. We're a nonprofit here in Michigan that's geared towards optimizing affordable housing with material and method. And so what that means to us is really shifting paradigms and how we look at affordable housing. And we're going to talk a lot about how we do that. So basically, we're going to introduce the Farm to Frame initiative, what that means. We're going to go over our primary activities that we're doing with this initiative and the team, the workforce development, talk a little bit about Hempcrete and my experiences with that, and then what's next. And so, as Brett said, we got a team of speakers here. I'm a part of that team with Hemp for Humanity. And basically, I started into this industry in 2020, 2021. And I learned about hempcrete building. I learned about the sustainability and the benefits of it, and really was interested in making that happen. And I quickly realized that there was nobody growing hemp, and there wasn't a lot of infrastructure around it in the state of Michigan. And so I set out, I started leasing land and learning how to farm it. And some years later, we started getting contracts to farm it. And also, all the while, I was traveling around the country and I was learning how to build with it. And in this past year, we did a few projects in different parts of the country and realized that the utility and the benefits of this material I felt were really being reserved for the as a luxury for higher income clients, and wanted to see how we could not only support the industry as a whole, but support the people with this material in a better way. So we founded the nonprofit last year, and then this wonderful team that we have assembled here today has assembled around the mission of really bringing hempcrete as an alternative material into the mainstream for affordable housing. and really propping up the supply chain. So we have on the supply chain end of things, we have Dave and Blaine with iHemp Michigan talking about farming. We have on the healthy homes design aspect of it, we have Alex, who's an architect, who was on the board of the US HBA with. In coalition building, we have Junko and Heart of New Earth, and then as a community liaison, we brought Native Cultivations on the team as well, and Tony's going to talk a little bit about her experience. Um, so yeah, overall, when we're talking about housing, I think some key aspects of what we aim to solve with our solutions in natural building and hempcrete are these three main categories. One, the sustainability of it. You know, as a lot of you guys in the construction industry know, buildings can be high waste, very inefficient, not very resilient, um, inequitable, which is a big proponent of what we're trying to prevent. So a lot of the worst aspects of our construction industry get passed off onto our lower income communities where the materials are cheaper, the houses are less energy efficient. And there's a lot of stats that support that. And then outdated, the way that we're building homes with all the technology that we have nowadays, there's so much advancement going on around us, but we're still stuck on these really antiquated supply chains. We're building in the same ways, um, while all of our building prices keep skyrocketing. And so there's definitely room for some innovation there. So when we look at the sustainability, we're talking about, not just energy efficiency and the performance of the home, but also the impacts outside. So what is the construction industry doing to our environment? And, if we look at Michigan as a whole, we're short. Everybody knows we're in that shortage of housing. But not only are we short in our housing stock, but also almost the majority of our housing stock is actually a health risk to a public, where we have mold issues and chronic illnesses that are starting to arise due to the indoor air environment. And then the average lifespan of the houses that we're building today is around 50 to 60 years before you need to remodel and demolish them, which is a huge landfill waste stream. And then when we look at the actual environment and the land that we're building on, this map right here is a map of Michigan, and by county, the concentration of contaminated sites. So we're set up over in Wayne County, and as you can see over there, between Wayne and Macomb, there's over 7,000 contaminated sites from industrial waste or different pollutants. And what we're going to talk about a little bit more today is how we can use our housing as a tool to heal that soil in the farming aspect of what we're doing. So super excited to talk more about that. And then in equity, I kind of touched on it before, but in Michigan alone, 1 in 7 households spends more than half of our income on our shelter. In the definition of affordable housing, I know that's a very ambiguous term, but usually we're looking at spending about a third of the income on our shelter. And so that's somewhere where we need a lot of improvement. And yeah, the disproportionate effect on asthma and other chronic illnesses really affects our low income communities way more. And I think another big aspect of what we're trying to do with natural building materials in the supply chain is not just improve the indoor built environment, but also the community around it. So bringing opportunities and the means of production back to our local communities. So how do we aim to tackle these problems? So the main activities that we're working on with the nonprofit right now are, one, agricultural supply chain development. So from the farm. So how do we prop up the industrial hemp industry? How do we start producing biomass in the state of Michigan locally to support industries like housing and other biomaterial industries as well? But how are we doing that? The second is building pilots. So actually building affordable housing and measuring the difference between building with these methods and conventional methods. And then 3, workforce development. How do we engage community and get people involved in these initiatives to where we're not just coming in and popping up houses, but we're actually building a resilient community and supply chain around the methods that we're using to provide more housing. Um, so first we'll start with the farming aspect and agricultural supply chain. Like I said, since 2021, we've been working in Michigan on variety trials with the Midwest Hemp Research Collaborative and other farming partners like iHemp. Um, and more recently, we've gotten into some soil remediation trials. So this is some important things that we found as we're working for 4 years on getting the supply chain kind of built out. A lot of the industries that hemp could be feeding into, like plastics and polymers and more high value industries like textiles and fibers, it takes a lot of infrastructure and a lot of investment to get those supply chains built out or to get existing supply chains converted into more biomaterial supply chains. But what we found recently is that one thing that doesn't take a lot of investment and doesn't take a lot of infrastructure is phytoremediation. And that's one thing that hemp is really, really powerful at doing is cleaning the soil. In this past year, on the charts on the right side of the screen, you can see the results from some PFAS remediation that we did in Brighton, Michigan on Jason Grostick's farm, who got shut down 4 years ago. And I think what this is extremely exciting to the industry is that we can we can have a use for this plant. We can start to grow it. We can teach farmers in urban and rural settings how to regenerate the soil with this plant. And now our research is extending into how do we take this material that we pulled off the PFAS site and turn it into actual value-added products like building materials. So that's some research that we're still investing in 2026, and I'm super excited about because yeah, if you look at Detroit and the potential for cleaning up all these contaminated sites and then using that material that we clean the sites with for redeveloping it into housing, I think it tells the story really well of what we can do here with this plant. So then, like I said, we want to really start to use this as a tool to develop communities with the affordable housing. So the workforce development is an important aspect of what we're doing because in being an alternative building material and in a new space, we want to really showcase the simplicity and the utility of this material and create jobs with it. And so, it's one thing to have a good building technology, but if no one knows how to use it, then it doesn't do much good. So, what I think where this really hits home for me is that I'm sure a lot of people in the audience today are in the construction industry and they are aware of all the tools that the state and the federal government have to provide housing for people in this shortage. Um, down payment assistance or HUD funding or LIHTC grants. All these are great mechanisms to make things pencil. But I think when we start to look at a material like this and engaging communities like this, I think what we're looking at is actually thinking of the house itself as a tool to support affordable housing, to support housing stock, to support resilient communities. Because what we're doing is we're bringing the means of production back to our local communities. We're creating jobs that people can, survive off of and live off of. And then we're also building homes that not only are affordable up front because of our local supply chain and workforce development programs, but they're also affordable in the long run. They have higher energy efficiency. You're going to be spending less on your health bills because you're not breathing in mold every day. You have more resilient housing stock, so you're spending less on maintenance. So all these long-term tools I think are really important to consider when we're talking about affordable housing. And I think it takes a material shift like this to really bring those things into the conversation. And then now to the frame. So the buildings, from a practical sense, this is how we build. We have engineered a structurally insulated panel system, and we're working on right now setting up our workforce training center in Detroit right now. So working with some partners there, and I'm very excited to get that going in 2026 as we're building for our pilot builds in the spring. So here's some quick demonstrations. Now we'll just get into a little bit about hempcrete. So like overall, that's what we're working on with Hemp for Humanity and FFI. But you know, depending on how much you guys have heard or know about hempcrete, we're going to have a quick overview. Alex is going to go more into this as well. So my overview will be just kind of a general quick one, but um, here's the basics of the supply chain. You know, like in 2024, we grew for paper, so we sold the fiber to a paper company, and then we can use the byproduct of that, which is the inner woody core, the hurd, for our building materials. So the wall system is it's quite a bit different. You know, a typical wall system, even in high performance homes, consists of a lot of layers, 7 to 14 layers. And each one of these layers is really designed with a specific purpose in mind. Either, water prevention, vapor, air. With hempcrete, what we're building is a monolithic wall system. So we have our main layer, the wall, and some finishes, and it's giving us all of those performance benefits in one material. So from an overview, we have a great thermal regulation. It's mold, bacteria, and pest resistant. It's fireproof. It dampens EMFs, insulates really well for sound, and it's completely non-toxic. So no VOCs. Very simple ingredients, which I think it is a key thing to consider when we're talking about training people in this industry. I think it lends itself really well to being a great material for workforce development or volunteer labor. So, um, really cool in that sense. Temperature has an R value about 2.2 per inch in the code. That's what it says. Um, but its thermal regulation is really unique in the sense that it has a thermal resistance, but it also has a thermal mass, which is what makes it so energy efficient. So, not only is it preventing temperature from moving through the wall, but it's also holding temperature to regulate the indoor air environment whenever there's swings outside, which you can kind of see in this chart here. The purple is the temperature swings in the exterior environment, and the red is the indoor environment. So it requires a lot less, you know, mechanical systems for heating and cooling and humidity here because it also has it regulates moisture really well. All those sciencey terms there. Definitely can get into the weeds on that more if you guys have questions. And another key aspect of the homes that we're building is that there's no off gassing. It's all natural materials, and we can still hit those blower door numbers that we need uh, to promote that passive house uh, principles. This is a big one too. I like to talk about for affordable housing, which, as we're getting into becoming that developer of affordable housing, um, and looking at sites, a lot of the sites that you see affordable housing built on is often in less desirable real estate by freeways or trains or airports. And, you know, just due to making projects pencil and getting land that is affordable for the developer. So if we can build homes that can still create a sanctuary inside, can still create a high quality of life inside, even in areas like that, I think that's super liberating and empowering to people that are living in those communities. So there's a few different methods. As I mentioned, we're really focused on the prefabrication method for a number of reasons, but we'll go over quickly the different methods and then what the cost is normally, if we're building as a GC or a subcontractor, and then what it could be with our workforce development programs and supporting the local supply chain. So cast in place or general material costs, you're looking at about $20 to $25 a cubic foot. And across the board, you'll see about a 20 to 30% savings with the methods that we're proposing with our nonprofit. So the cast in place, that labor is going to add about $7 a cubic foot. And this is the most classic method, very easy to do. But there's some constraints in the construction timeline when you're applying hempcrete in this way. Spray application is a lot more efficient on the job, but it requires a little bit more equipment and technical skills for the application methods. And then the prefabricated methods, which is either panels or blocks, we can definitely save a lot on labor and time. So if we can pre-manufacture this. It'll take us about a month to get a full home kit out the door. And then once it's on site, it's a few days to put it up. So it's super efficient for putting up your framed insulated wall. If you're doing cast in place, here's a few different framing methods. And, I'm breezing through this sections for time's sake, because Alex is also going to go more into these details. But if there's any questions, yeah, definitely put them in the chat or we can answer them after this. Here is the IRC code. As I mentioned, me and Alex were on the board of the USHBA, which is the organization that got this into the IRC code in 2022. So which was a huge step for the industry. And now when we're approaching different municipalities, in Michigan or in Tennessee or Illinois, where we're just doing jobs, having a code precedent and saying this is the research, this is the data on these building systems, it makes it much more easier, especially in states like ours where building codes are we haven't adopted it yet, and there's a bunch of drama around that. If we have actual data to show in a technique, it makes it a lot easier to get things moving in the permitting section, which I haven't had too much trouble with up to this point. So what's next for us in 2026? Like I was saying, we have a couple sites that we secured for our affordable housing pilots in Pontiac and Everett. We want to really demonstrate what we're doing with two small 2-bed, 1-bath units. And we want to, with this and working with different organizations, we want to measure the energy efficiency and the benefits of using this material for the construction phase and the lived-in phase. We want to use these pilots to deploy our workforce training curriculum and publish that data so that we can replicate this across the state. As I said, we want to open up our training center in Detroit, and we're talking to some organizations in Detroit right now about securing some lots for brownfield remediation to try to clean those up. So working with Hemp and Potts Farms on deploying the regenerative farming techniques on different urban sites is a goal for 2026. And then we want to scale up our PFAS research and continue, as I said, researching how we can take that material off the farm and put it into value-added products. There's a couple different ways that we're doing that. And if you're interested in that field, definitely reach out. We can talk about the techniques that we're approaching. And I would love to get feedback and learn more about, what anybody else is doing in this field, because it's super exciting for us. Yeah, so overall, the output of what we're doing is healthier homes, healthier soil. But the impact that we want to have is bringing people together around localized supply chains and we want to connect people to each other in their community and to the planet using housing as a tool to do that. So that's the outcome that we're going for. And then here's a bit about our team. And the last thing I want to say before I pass it off, the reason why we're having these webinars and these community engagement and education events is we really want to engage with people across Michigan and beyond to understand your view on housing and materials and community development. And so we have these surveys that we're asking participants to fill out. We're working with an institutional review board to really compile this data into community needs assessments to see how this team can best serve in different communities across the state and beyond with alternative building solutions and farming curriculum and all the stuff that we just talked about. So I'll give you guys a second here. This is the QR code to the survey. There's also a link there, and I'm sure we can share the link in the chat as well. So, 5 to 10 minutes, it makes a world of difference for us. We would love to get your guys' feedback on this and see, where we can help with these solutions. So with that, thank you guys so much for the time. I think next up on the list, we're going to be talking about farming with iHemp. Brett, am I right there?
Yeah, go ahead and stop sharing, and then Dave, you can start sharing. And while we're doing that, a quick question. was about ground contact. Somebody was saying, in the past they wanted to build this way, but they were as concerned about the materials coming in contact with the ground and wondering if some of the solutions you've come up with avoid that or if that even is a problem.
Yeah, this is hempcrete in general is not approved for below grade, in generally speaking. There's different mixes that you can do. Like if you've heard of like NextChem foundation blocks, that's like a woodcrete. So it's a biocomposite block, but it uses a different binder that would make it approved for ground contact.
Mhm.
And those binders kind of prevent all the benefits that we were talking about when we're talking about vapor open or transmissive transmission, or the insulation factors. So if we're looking at hempcrete from a pure perspective with all the benefits that we talked about, it's really a non-structural infill insulation material. And that's kind of like its category.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for this opportunity to do a little education on hemp. My name's Dave Craybill. I got involved in the industrial hemp industry late 2018. A good friend of mine, John Freeman, had some really cheesy business cards talking about industrial hemp. I didn't know what he was talking about. And I have a small marketing agency, and I got drug into this mess and immediately fell in love with the culture of the farming industry. And we learned from seed to sale everything about the industrial hemp, and it's just kind of taken off from there. And thanks to great people like Cody for really leading the charge on implementing these building practices, it's a potentially a viable industry. We have a lot of battles, and that's some of the things I'm going to touch on today. Our biggest challenge really is 80 years of propaganda and misinformation about this commodity crop. Yeah, this is a photo taken by the Associated Press. When I was a teenager, my mom stopped me from trying to grow a couple little plants, and I never had the chance to grow again. So I was super excited. I grew 3,000 plants on 1 acre, and it was a CBD variety. And we're going to talk a little bit about CBD and what that is, and the different types of crops that are available from this plant. But on this slide, I say why it isn't marijuana. It's all cannabis sativa. So it's one plant, and it has different expressions and different uses based on the genetics of the plant. So there's a few different commodities.
Commodities.
I'm getting some feedback, Brett. Is that? I don't know if anybody else is hearing that, but
Hopefully just a rare occurrence. Just keep going.
okay, all right. So with the CBD or with recreational cannabis and such, the focus is on the flower, and that's where it has a natural expression of stress. It puts out this rosin with these THC crystals, and that's where the magic happens, in the flower. What Cody's talking about is in the stem, and in that stem of the plant, as he discussed, there's two different fibers. There's the outer long fiber, and I have some. We actually have a decorticator here in Michigan for the first time. I'm so excited about that. You have no idea what a challenge it's been. But this is that really long fiber that is great for fabric and textiles. But we don't have a textiles industry here in the U.S. right now. So that a lot of farmers started growing for this, but there really wasn't the big market. What they found was that in a herd, it's kind of a woody, very cellulose inner product that Cody uses for the insulation in the walls. That's also great for animal bedding. It's naturally antibiotic. It's absorbent. So there's a lot of great properties for animal bedding. So that market developed really quickly, and now with the approval of the residential building, we're seeing the hemp lime combination for building is starting to take off. So we have the flower and the seed. Now my co-founder Blaine Bechtold, he was planned to do this presentation today. I found out this morning that was my job. But Blaine's in Lansing talking to the Cannabis Regulatory Agency because there's regulation that affects us. We're growing in Michigan under the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. Well, it's the growing side is under the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And what initially started out as, hey, pay us $100 and you can grow some plants and do some research and learn about what grows here in Michigan, what varieties are going to perform well, and what markets can we develop. Instead, they pivoted and they charged $1,350 for the privilege of growing, and then they tend to come onto the fields in really a predatory manner to do everything they can to make you fail. Because if your crop goes over 0.36%, it's supposed to be 0.3%, but they give you a little margin of error because of the measurements. If it goes over that, even a fiber crop where you bought 5 acres of land, you're going to use 3 acres of that to grow some fiber, and you're going to build your 900 square foot home using that fiber from your crop. I mean, that's something we could do. But if it expresses a little too much THC, you have to destroy that crop. So these are legislative, regulatory problems, not farming problems. That we're working as iHemp Michigan, through our advocacy to overcome. So these are the areas of the crop, and in that hemp building is just one of the many uses. It's you'll probably see the claim 25,000, 50,000 uses of hemp, and we really get into the weeds to come up with all those various uses. But the one that I didn't touch on yet is the seed, and Blaine grows for the seed, which is the grain of the crop. You can go to Meijer and get hemp hearts and put on your oatmeal or on your salad. And that seed is high in protein, like 30% protein, and has a perfect balance of amino acids. So it's something that's really beneficial for both animal feed, and it's been approved now for laying hens. That took a lot of time and money. What we're finding is even if the crop is being used in other areas of the world successfully, we still have to go through all of the testing and compliance, and then for each subcategory. So a laying hen is different than a fryer hen. So there's a number of different categories that we have to go through the approvals and testing. So that work is being led by the Hemp Feed Coalition. But this plant gives us a lot of opportunity to really heal both people and the planet. And that's really my mission today, is to educate you on the various things that hemp, industrial hemp, as it was regulated in the 2018 Farm Bill, offers to us. So it offers medicine, food, and industrial uses. This Hemponomics 101 is something I give to like a Chamber of Commerce and such. So that's really trying to give some anecdotal evidence and such to this. But the decorticator, Robin Pott of Pott Farms, has a decorticator, and it's the first decorticator in Michigan. So that's part of what we need to really build a sustainable building industry, is to be able to process the plants. So the long tall plants that we grow for fiber have to be separated. We have to eliminate this outer fiber from the inner hurd. So we have our first decorticator. We need about $10 million of investment to build an industrial scale plant to do this really at scale. So that, and then the hemp fiber, both the hemp fiber and the hurd have a number of industrial applications, including, as you see on the wall behind me, that's all hemp wood. So that we have hemp flooring from hemp wood out of Kentucky, and they can cut it thin to do decorative walls and such. The building materials are simple. You can do it yourself. It just has to be the hemp hurd has to be chopped to a consistent size, ideally, to be easy to work with. So as I mentioned, the animal bedding, and Corey and Alex are going to cover the hemp building in a lot of detail. So, and someone had mentioned about access to these products, and unless we have the farmers able to grow this crop safely with low risk and get at least as much money as soybean or corn, the commodity crops that they're selling now, we're not going to have that industry. So as you can see, the numbers initially of growers was great. Most of it was for CBD because that was where the money was. But this year we have maybe 50 growers. The number of acres planted is reduced, and the risk, the regulatory risk, is really where we're at. So we need to talk to your legislators and say, hey, this, don't be afraid of this plant, and we need a fair path, to come up with this industry, and there's a lot of work to be done to build out this industry. So that's all I have for you, Brett.
Dave, what is there a sort of a concerted effort? Is there an entity like you all are doing great work here in Michigan at the sort of state level? Are there sort of a national entity who's like, here's what we need, to do to have these conversations with our legislators in a joint effort to be effective in each state at the federal level? Is that, I mean, in a short way, is there like any entity that's doing that?
Yeah, the U.S. Hemp Roundtable is one of the lead lobbyists, and their website is hempsupporter.com. I can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
There's some controversy. Anytime someone takes a direction, there's going to be someone who's not happy with that, right? But between the U.S. Hemp Roundtable and Hemp Industry International, they're taking the lead on the overall hemp industry. The Hemp Feed Coalition is specifically about that hemp grain path. And the U.S. Hemp Building Association did the great work to get the building codes approved. So
Yeah.
those are the
iHemp and
organizations.
FFI also, Dave, just to interject, iHemp is doing a lot of work for us, lobbying and
Mhm.
advocating for us and speaking nationally to the USDA. So I'm going to throw in iHemp is the one for us that is
Hmm.
doing that advocating.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So
Awesome. Well, and yeah, well, thanks, Dave and Tony. I'm glad you chimed in because I see you are up next. So we can't see you anymore, but if you want to turn your camera on, otherwise, feel free to share your screen and we'll there you are.
Hey there.
We'll jump over to
Hi.
you. So hi.
So let's see deck slides that we all did together as a organization, all working together for Farm to Frame initiative. Native Cultivations and iHemp, Hemp for Humanity, and Heart of New Earth, and Sexsmith Architects. are funded to be able to work together and do an educational tour in Michigan to talk about industrial hemp building materials. We envision empowered individuals to generate their own energy and grow their own food. So our 5 organizations, at the end of the day, we want to have a house that has the ability to harness its own energy and to be able to do geothermal heating and cooling. We want to have outdoor living space. We want to have a geothermal greenhouse system for lazy gardening. And the curriculum that we're working towards to build out now is going to touch on seed to structure. So your curriculum is going to have to build hemp houses is going to have information on how to farm. See, that's a huge, huge book. It's got a lot more than just your building in it. And so our team is going to make that happen. We're pushing that needle forward. Intertribal Hemp Construction Project is the concept for working with the tribes that Native Cultivations works with on a state level and a national level. We're part of the Intertribal Agriculture Council. We're members of them, and they are our technical aides in Intertribal Hemp Construction Project, and they're on board with helping us with the Farm to Frame initiative and bringing as many people together. I feel super blessed to be the tribal liaison for Farm to Frame initiative. It gives us access to all of you guys, your architects, your professionals. Let's go down here. Native Cultivations is a hemp farm and a maple syrup farm. We have a nonprofit and a C corporation. The nonprofit is educational to push the needle forward on hemp construction materials and using the textiles, using all of the plant. The example would be that you use every single piece of a deer. You don't let any of it go to waste. You also use every piece of the hemp plant. So when you're growing it for seeds, like Blaine Bechtold and down on the farm, we have the ability to use the fiber in the stock. If he's not using that, he can contribute that to the cause, or sell it as biomass to come in for extra income on the plant. H4H is a licensed general contractor in Michigan, so we lean on them to come and train our tribal members and come into our tribal communities to show us the way on that. Same with Sexsmith Architects and Heart of New Earth. Just completely blessed to have these professionals on team. And our team is very strong. Selena Shenandoah is the general manager for the Grassy Knoll dispensary. She's on team with us as a co-owner for Native Cultivations Farm. She's a panel facilitator for Intertribal Hemp Construction Project. She does the recording and videography for us on our end. She does our social media and our marketing content, and then she also owns a Kemishkike, which is an equine therapy, and we also use those animals for our regenerative practice. So her role with the IHCP is to, like I said, to be that. And then this is myself. If you can see in there, I'm the general manager and co-owner of Native Cultivations Farm nonprofit, and I'm the wife to the GTB member, Mark Shenandoah, since 1996, going on our 4th decade. My role for Farm to Frame Initiative and IHCP is to be the tribal outreach, tribal community, organic garden project trainer, and curriculum author. And Just to put a little note in there, we did an event at the Michigan Intertribal Food Sovereignty Coalition, and we were able to pull in Saginaw Chippewa Tribal College and Bay Mills Community College to collaborate on building that curriculum. Just leaving that note out there for you all to step in with us to if you're interested in building that curriculum and you have some significant things to contribute, then let's go. Let's go. Put your name in the comments, and people pick it, and we'll contact you. So the person on the far left with the striped on equipment is a stroke participant, and he will be our lead for native cultivations and building that workforce up. Next picture is my husband and myself. That's Mark Shinanaquit, and he is the farmer. He is the grower. He's the guy that does the genetics. He's found a lot of ways to bring this plant into where we need it to be. And the next picture over is Caleb Anderson, and he runs our regenerative farm. And so he has the market gardens, and he works for the tribe's agriculture department. And he will be also putting his hat in his name in the hat for learning how to build with him. The next person over, that is Selena Shinanaquit. And going on here, that's telling you a little bit more about Blaine Bechtold. He's the founder of iHemp, and he's done a lot of significant things. So we give thanks to him for helping us get into the hemp industry. He contacted us, and we became part of the iHemp membership. And he took, I think, maybe 50 of us up there and got us licensed, and Native Cultivations turned out to be the second licensed in the state. And when Dave was talking about the state coming out looking like they're predators on our fields, that's exactly true. That is exactly true. So we started growing in 2019, and we've grown every year up to 2023. The industry is saturated with CBD products. We scaled up at 18 products. If you look on our Facebook and our Instagram, you'll be able to see that. And I did put our Instagram address in the comments on here. So Blaine, he's our grant writer. He's a curriculum author. He's a farm consultant, and he's into hemp manufacturing. So he has a plethora of knowledge for us to hold on to. You've already met Cody, and Cody is driving for us. We couldn't get a better driver than Cody. His role is he's the main grantee for the funding that we received. He signed contracts with Native Cultivations and iHemp and the other two organizations, Sexsmith and Heart of New Earth. Obviously, he's the general contractor, he's a curriculum author, he's a hemp farm consultant, and he has access to the panel design. That's his design. And then we have Junko, who is the founder of Heart of New Earth. She's going to be coming on here, so I don't have to say too much about her, but I just want to say, if you're going to have an organization that is funded, you need a stellar compliance officer and financial expert. Junko comes from Harvard, and either Harvard or Oxford. I'm sorry, Junko. One of those big ones anyway. And we're super appreciative of her. She keeps us on track. She's the management and strategic planning. She's finance and operations. She's fundraising and partnership development. She's curriculum development. She minored in that education. And we're awesome to have Alex Sexsmith. He's been involved in building hemp for quite some time, and he's going to give us some more information about that. But we're super blessed to have him on team. down here, challenges for affordable, healthy homes in Indian country. Like Cody said, we're the ones that get the crappy material. We're the ones that have our elders sitting in housing, getting sicker and sicker. But we're happy that we got that housing up. We're minus 200,000 housing units in Michigan. And our housing authorities and our procurement officers in housing authorities and the codes for tribal trust land, these are all challenges. And we're just starting one at a time, visiting housing authorities and showing the options for this material and letting them know you have access now. Not only does Native Cultivation and Intertribal Hemp Construction Project work with Farm to Frame Initiative, but we're also tied to Winona's Hemp Farm. We're tied to White Earth. We're tied to and connecting with Prairie Band in Kansas, and we're connected with Danny DeJuris from the Lower Sioux tribe. We've been involved with Cody and I went out to the International Hemp Building Symposium out at the Lower Sioux, and we were able to talk to a lot of people and get a lot of people on board for filling out our survey. We went to the Fair and Feast this year for the Grand Traverse Band, and we had everybody that passed our booth filled out a survey and wanted to know more. And when the question was asked, are you interested in building with hemp and using hemp material to build? The first thing is they had no idea that could be a thing. And second was, yes, absolutely. Absolutely, we want to have healthy housing. So that's the challenge. And I believe that we can conquer that. We can solve that issue. And, the fact that we want to have solar or wind energy, and the fact that we want to have geothermal, we know that there are grants and there are tribes standing on that funding and that information, trying to get healthy housing for their tribe. I'm right there. The solutions are that we band together. We bring healthy building education, finish this curriculum so that we can have the state-of-the-art processing and decortication facility in Michigan in at least 3 different places that specialize in material, that specialize in construction material, and biodiesel. And yeah, we want to go there. So we want to be transparent partnerships, and we need alternative funding streams. Each one of our organizations needs to have operating funds. To move the needle forward for us, we need partnerships with you to come on board and help us. The Intertribal Hemp Construction Project will take Farm to Frame Initiative into the communities to build healthy houses using hemp construction material. And we do have 3 tribes already standing in line waiting for us to be able to, and figuring out how to go forward with building the house. So it'd be great if we could just say, here's a contract and this is what we're going to go ahead and do. But it's way more complicated than that. There is a tribe up in the UP that has already set aside $200,000 to build a hemp house with Lisa Songbird, but it didn't happen. They weren't able to follow through with it, and they're still trying. So Farm to Frame Initiative is relevant for us, and Intertribal Hemp Construction Project couldn't be happier to be part of the Farm to Frame Initiative. So there's that again. Goals and objectives. We want to engage with Indigenous communities, industry professionals, and ecosystems to map resources for healthy homes, to build business models for future forward human-centered climate. And number two, we want to secure a variety of grants and investments to build strong partnerships, improve business practices, acquire property, and build project infrastructures. Number three, we want to create spaces that foster Indigenous cultural, educational cross-pollination. There of knowledge and strong relationships for community and resilience and sustainability. I believe that this webinar and the people that are on with us have the ability to partner with us, that this webinar is very valuable for us to move our needle forward and put more professionals together for this team. So we put a project phases together in a timeline just to let you see a little bit. Got to move that out of the way. Okay. So 2025, our goals. We went to the Grand Traverse Band. We've been at Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, and we've been with Lockbow Band. Those are three tribes that are working hard to make this hemp construction move forward for their housing authorities. They had said that they want to build a community center that would show the people what the material looks like and how long it lasts and why it's good. In 2026, we want to have 10 completed hemp houses in 2026. We want to be able to do the workforce training in 2026. We want to have a team of contractors that come together to get trained to be the foremans of the next groups that get trained out. 2027, you can see that we have climate resilience and solar powered garden ready homes. And the curriculum to be completed by then. And that's the end of my, oh no, I got a little bit more. Hold on. Do I have more time? Because I'm at 104 now. Hey, Brett.
I guess I defer to Cody.
Okay, so sorry about the background. These are the proposed projects that I just told you about. Here's the little house that is already designed. Got the blueprints for it. This is a 570 square foot house. It's a 1-bedroom. And so if you can see, there's the floor plan. And consider all of the outdoor living space that we're going to put in there. And we said that this one for $250,000 that includes land, we would be able to put this one together. And these are the panel systems that we're using to put that house together. Impact and benefits of the project. The effect on families will be collaboration towards achieving food security, along with the positive impact on the environment and sustainable living practices. This includes living soil, hemp housing, and off-grid savings. By alleviating the pressure of high-stress jobs, individuals can focus more on caring for their families and communities, and ultimately making life easier and promoting better health. So we put this together for you to look at right now and see if there's anything in here that you would be interested in starting with us right now. Each one of us has the ability to work with you on projects, or we can work with you together as a team. Can everybody see that? I'm going to end on that slide right there and ask for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. And real quick, as those questions are coming in, just a quick reminder that yes, this session is being recorded and will be listed on our YouTube channel in the next week. So you can check back there, or you can go there now, click subscribe, and get an instant update when it's available. And then, yeah, we just wanted to remind everybody briefly about that. But I did not see any other questions, so I think maybe at this time, Alex, I see you're on, so you want to jump in next, and Tony, stick around because we are going to do more formal Q&A, and we'll bring them up if that's all right.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks,
Let me
Tony.
get
That was
my
great. So my name is Alex Sexsmith. I'm an architect. I'm based in Tucson, Arizona. I'm the Southern Arizona Committee on the Environment Chair and a former U.S. Hemp Building Association board member. As you can see on the slide here, I've given this presentation a few different times, and I'm going to try and condense a 45-minute presentation into hopefully 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll go quick. When I first gave this presentation, all the examples that I'm showing here were European projects. And in the past few years, since 2018, when I started getting involved in this, we've seen more and more high quality projects. This is kind of small, medium, and large on the, from left to right. Caja Cool's Wally Farms project was done by Cameron and Tom Ross Mosler. The Cape Cod Hemp House in the middle, a spray applied project that was kind of a dream team of hemp builders from around the country and the world, people coming over from France to help build that, as well as the US. And the Hillside Sustainable Living Project outside of Boston. It's actually a design, develop, build practice. You guys should check them out. It's an interesting model, regardless of what you're building with, but a project that's really all about reducing embodied carbon. I, however, originally got into this after having dealt with toxic black mold. So I was living in Southern California, practicing as an architect, working away on projects, had to deal with water damage and black mold. I think when I talked about this, most people were thinking, like blue cheese or maybe some vegetables that had stayed in the fridge too long. But toxic black mold, or Stachybotrys, is a really toxic mold that's, a lot of people don't seem to know about. I certainly didn't. I was LEED certified and had been practicing for about 15 years, and I'd heard of realtors doing mold inspections, but I'd never really heard about the effects of mycotoxins, and it was an eye opener for me. And it was in the mold forums. Again, this is 2017, 18, that I read about hemp lime and hempcrete. And so I started researching and said, this is happening in Europe, but it was really right around the time that industrial hemp was being legalized in the US. So it's one of those things where I looked at this and I thought, if this really makes sense for me, it's an interesting time for me to be engaged. So again, kind of refresher, because we've been looking at different facets of this and talking about this in different ways. What is hempcrete or hemp lime construction? So largely, we can talk about a bio-based material. There are some rooms where I walk in and maybe I lead off with hemp and I can lose people. But if I talk about climate smart solutions, bio-based materials, other ways of saying this, meaning learning the language of the folks that I'm addressing and finding ways to connect with them, then I can keep their attention and bring them into the logic of why we're talking about this. So hemp hurd, lime binders, and water, those are the main three ingredients. Lime usually with other minerals to help accelerate the mix. Cody talked about this quite clearly, but it's just worth repeating. This is non-structural, right? Fire resistant, mold resistant, and there are folks who are starting to talk about this as in like carbon negative. But if you start getting pushback, so I like to talk about this as a low carbon, high performance solution, really emerging as an opportunity from the 2018 Farm Bill. And most important, a vapor permeable monolithic assembly. Why is that important? A lot of times we talk about thermal performance in terms of R value, but it's also important, especially down here in the Southwest, but in other parts of the country as well, talking about thermal mass. And then also a word that I didn't learn until last year, hygrothermal, meaning balancing vapor and moisture management. So this is really coming from the 1980s in France, restoring traditional forms of construction. I saw there was a question earlier asking about decomposition. These were homes that were 300 or 400 years old, and it was really the Maison de Turquie on the left that was a UNESCO World Heritage Home. And the builders who were doing the restorations basically came up with this modern formulation of hempcrete. And so
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, Alex, because obviously, people think these natural materials they're going to rot, they're going to mold, especially in humid climates. And so you just kind of showed that, hey, these have been around a long time. But you said the keyword restoration, and so maybe the question I'll kind of add to it a little bit is then, okay, if we want to do this, does it require additional types of maintenance that maybe our traditional building doesn't require?
good question. I think, a lot of times, this is a little bit of a segue, but a lot of times people will talk about cost when we're talking about, quote, green construction, right? The premium, and then the what is it? The price parity paradox that we're supposed to be better in every way and be as good or on price or less expensive. And that doesn't necessarily happen because what we're talking about is not just first cost, but also maintenance cost, ongoing cost, utilities costs. The first project that I did in New Orleans, this is slightly off topic, but just answer to Brett's question. The first project that I did in New Orleans, the one of the people who were really supporting the project, she had done a renovation of her offices and seen that her utilities bills had dropped by 40%. And so thinking about maintenance, how well does current construction last over time? Are we making forms of construction that are easier to build or are less expensive or are more aligned with industrial forms of production, but actually don't last as long? So that's food for thought. For me, the really entree after dealing with black mold was this kind of conversation about healthy buildings. These are examples, balanced earth architects. If you don't know them, they're some of my people that I look up to in Australia. And then a project in Spain, Idea Arquitectura, talking about wellness development, affordable housing is kind of, that's one facet of it. But for me, is certainly for my background, talking about healthy buildings, and I would say healthy buildings for all, right? And then we figure out how to make the budget aligned to scope. So again, hemp hurd, lime, and water is the three main ingredients. And both Dave and Cody showed this. So what we were talking about, the exterior of the plant is where the fiber is coming from, and the interior is where the hemp hurd is coming from, the woody stalk. You can see CBD plants versus industrial hemp. We talked about this a little bit, the little Christmas trees versus what to me looks far, far closer to a bamboo forest. Totally different, again, as Dave said, different expressions of a similar plant. So I was doing all this research, but also, reading, looking for other ways of sharing this and finding other threads of connection. So the aha moment really for me was in 2020 when I was listening to a well webinar talking about Joseph Allen and John McCumber, their new book on healthy buildings. And shortly after that, Kiss the Ground came out on Netflix, talking about regenerative agriculture as a real source to our carbon problem. Their main point was we don't have a carbon problem, we have a carbon location problem, meaning too much in the air and not enough in the soil. Carbon in the soil makes healthy soil, healthy plants, healthy humans, healthy communities. So connecting those dots is, I would say, a lot of what I feel like I've been doing, and continue to find other ways of finding more locally relevant or audience specific sources to be able to help bring more awareness to this. And then if you take away nothing else from my presentation, really for me, this kind of paradigm shift between thinking about where it is we get our building materials. This is a Patagonia farm in southern Colorado. This is a picture of a test plot that they were doing because previously most of their hemp was coming from China. And the question was, can they grow it in the US? And they chose southern Colorado as one of the test plots. The opposite end of the spectrum, Cancer Alley, petrochemical plants. They've produced a lot of amazing products in some ways, but also a lot of harmful chemicals. And we talked a little bit about environmental justice, social justice. Those polluting factories are often in the poorest communities. And so, again, connecting this idea of healthy buildings to healthy communities and a healthy planet, we can't have a healthy building, in my mind, in 2025, made out of materials that make someone else's community toxic, sick, polluted in some way. And just quick iteration on this, when we talk about different facets of the production of building materials, even the graph showing a lot of industrial processes there. And so it's like the red part here is all industrial, and just the little trees on the left there being natural. And to me, the promise of a real kind of farm to table architecture, as Cody calls it, farm to frame initiative, is the idea that we can have buildings made out of materials that are less processing, that are less industrial, and therefore are bridging that urban-rural divide. And so then when you think about it, the materials that we choose can have a direct effect on the communities that all around the country. So this is a photo of the East Palestine, Ohio, the train wreck. Luxury vinyl tiles come from vinyl chloride, which was in the train that crashed. And so as architects, part of this conversation for me is about agency and about the care and provenance of the materials in our buildings. Another important piece of this for me was the Marshall Fire in 2021. So doing all this research on hempcrete, we moved from Los Angeles in 2021, briefly to Colorado before settling in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and obviously now in Tucson, Arizona. But the Marshall Fire happened shortly after we left Colorado. And the big takeaway for me, the really shocking part, apart from the trauma of the fire, was that homeowners were not allowed to go back to their homes because the neighborhoods were too toxic. And so it was very clear to me, this is obviously a part of the story of the rebuilding of Los Angeles now also, that the chemicals and products in our homes, when we're talking about resilience, there's also the aftermath, right? The phthalates, the dioxins, all the chemicals that are in these modern building products now are in the soil, are in our watersheds and communities. So for me, the question I like to ask audiences is, what is really the definition between regenerative and extractive? Meaning, can we talk about regenerative buildings made with primarily extractive materials? Now, if you're building a small house, it's much easier in 2025 to change your palette. If we're talking about larger institutional projects, that's a longer term goal. It's happening obviously more in Europe than it is here today, but this is a long-term project, and we shouldn't imagine that it's going to happen overnight. A lot of different connections that I try and make. Again, I talk about language as a way to be able to make this point to people to help shift their thinking about what it is that we're really up to. And so, in some places, talking about the bio-based movement, great. Now we've got a conversation going, but that doesn't really engage folks in government. So maybe talking about rural economic development is something that resonates more. Talking to the Living Future or Green Build crowds, talking about shifting this idea of regenerative architecture from metaphor really to performance, talking about not just buildings that giving back, but materials that literally are rapidly renewable and that can be harvested every few months or even every season. The carbon piece is something that a lot of people are talking about right now. So if we're going to talk about community health, healthy buildings, and planetary health all aligned, then I would say what we're really talking about, again, in 2025, because people who've been working at this for so long have been helping to change the codes before us to make the codes more stringent. And so this next step that we're all taking in the building industry is to reduce the embodied carbon, not just the operational carbon of buildings, but the embodied carbon of building materials. And as you can see from some of these graphs, the petrochemical products at the top, high greenhouse gas emissions. So you want a high performance home, fantastic. But do you do so by using materials that have a high embodied carbon, or can you consider changing your palette? Does it align for the project to be able to use cork or hempcrete or straw bale? And on the left, you can see similarly metals, aluminum, fiberglass, well, that's not a metal, but brass, lead, zinc, versus straw and timber at the bottom. There's been a lot of conversations about how much carbon. I've seen numbers from as low as 6 tons of CO2 per acre to as much as 54 tons. And if you think about it, this is a natural product. You could have several 100,000 plants per acre, or as many as 1 million. You can have plants that are 4 feet tall versus 8 to 12 feet tall. And so there is a range because we're talking about biomass here. But even if you take the low end of the spectrum, the 6 tons of CO2 per acre, that's about as much CO2 as a single car per year. So my point at this point is maybe depending on what room I'm talking about, hemp, yes, but also a range of different bio-based materials. So wheat straw, rice straw, kanaf, hemp, and bamboo, all helping us shift towards a more bio-based palette. And then if we think about this on a kind of more regional perspective, think about land use and some of these policies. If we're literally building buildings out of materials that are grown, we're encouraging more agriculture. And so the folks at the Kiss the Ground making a point that bare soil versus land that has crops on it, really, really quite different. So I think the temperature readings over the planted areas were in the mid to high 50s, and the bare soil in 120, 130 degrees. You can see the parallel in terms of urban heat island effect. So an image that I've shown quite a few different times, this is a Regen Homes project in Netherlands, visionary project. I think it was put out in 2016, talking about local food production and housing interspersed as a kind of healthy model for the future. Their project has, as I understand it, been stalled largely because of focus on technology, but the model itself, it looks to me like a traditional or a contemporary version of a traditional village. And when we think about different places in Michigan that this might align to me, it makes a lot of sense. Last project as we're wrapping up here, the Margent Farm project in the UK. This was notable for me, especially when we're talking about this kind of farm to frame initiative. This was a project that was built almost entirely out of materials from the farm on which the clients asked to build the project. So cast in place hempcrete panels and then hemp resin corrugated panels as the exterior. And the last slide, when we think, where are we? Like 2025, heading into 2026, if we think about single family homes versus the scale of which Henning Larsen, this project, the logistics center, you guys might have seen this in Dezeen or on LinkedIn, totally different scale. And this is straw bale and mass timber, so slightly different palette. But the idea, again, about contemporary natural building, specifically, you can see the image on the left that they're trying to put out there about the connection between nature and building, really quite different from the way we have been building for the last, say, 50 years. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk and just say, really, I think what we're, for me personally, and then, the context of Michigan, we're talking about some of the policy issues here now, is moving from challenge to opportunity, finding ways to move the needle forward, to inspire people when it is hard. Some of the policy work can be challenging and dull, especially if you're a designer or architect at heart. But it's part of what I would say is important to give back to the industry, to our potential clients and communities. So thank you very much.
All right, I think I'm going next. And I will go through this really quickly because my presentation is more around putting your organizational and business development hat on. So if all of y'all will bear with me here. Let's see. And I hope the screen is showing.
Yep.
Okay, great. Because all of a sudden my screen just disappeared. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And thank you for Greenhorn Institute for inviting us to speak. This has been a year in the works in terms of our 5 organizations coming together. And you've seen a couple of slides already of the group. One of the things that creates a really great coalition or partnership for us has been the competency synergies and market positioning of all of us coming together. First, there's the construction side of the work, which Cody and H4H Foundation holds. Practical implementation and data collection on hempcrete performance. We have iHemp Michigan, really driving and collecting information around policy, so regulatory expertise and business development across Michigan, as well as creating coalitions and business associations coming together for a place to cross-pollinate in terms of best practices and to be able to amplify the voice of the farmers. Cultural innovation through native cultivations. This brings a complete holistic approach of urban, tribal, and rural communities. State of Michigan is very active compared to some of the other states. I'm from New England area, and so where a lot of tribal communities no longer are as upfront and center. And so for us working in Michigan, being able to really integrate a lot of the tribal sovereignty language and practices that we can learn from is incredibly valuable. Then there's the design aspect and the architectural profession, which Alex has been promoting through educational panels and business association presentations, really bringing the professional architectural expertise into this conversation that often, as he mentioned before, really gets derailed with the marijuana side of the conversation, whereas it's absolutely a completely different design and plant species. So, well, not species, but strand of the plant. And so really trying to get the national industry to understand what this is all about, rather than having them rely on guesswork and assumptions. Then my organization, Heart of New Earth, we bridge the global and the hyperlocal. So we try to bring as much global impact that we can for strategic leadership, funding. There's a lot of different funding mechanisms that businesses, especially if they're small businesses, might not be aware of. And then the worldwide networks that we are able to bring together. So that creates a very holistic and powerful team that we've been bringing together. And I'll talk a little bit about challenges and successes. And so one of the things that I'd like to introduce is just, and many of you might already know this, but positioning yourself based on what the global and national conversations are already taking place. So the Global Corporate Sustainability Report, and there's one for 2025, in which, sorry, I'm like looking at my little slides here. It talks about the corporate sustainability policy and governance practices globally. What is it useful for? It's useful for benchmarking your organizational resilience reporting and planning ESG elements of green building programs. So if your organization is a green building focused, and that's how you're advertising your company, then it's really helpful to see where, comparison points on a larger scale. How do you compare to the global partners? Are you planning on scaling globally, or are you looking at national or local? Depending on the size of your organization and what your aspiration is, this will give you a benchmark. Then there's the 2025 C-Suite Sustainability Report. This is a report out of Deloitte. These are C-suite perspectives on sustainability as business value driver. This will help you align sustainability strategy that you create with business resilience and stakeholder value. So it's like, what are the stakeholders, valuing, and then being able to match your strategy to that. These are key for private sector engagement in the green building. Anybody who's trying to partner with a large corporation or development, you want to be able to really speak this language. The Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI standards, these are widely adopted sustainability reporting frameworks for global language. And that way you're speaking the same language rather than using language that might have other interpretations depending on what sector you're talking to. The building sector might be using different language than, let's say, the finance sector, right? And it enables comparability and transparency across the board when you're talking about metrics. About 90% of large companies now use GRI. So this is a really great benchmark for you. It can inform your reporting framework for green building initiatives and help partners communicate impacts credibly. Now, the Climate Resilience Infrastructure Report, the ICSI, this is a climate resilient of infrastructure with technology adaptation examples. This integrates digital tools and community-centered solutions. So it's really useful for green building stakeholders like yourselves, exploring resilient design, tools, and infrastructure synergies. When we talk, if any of you are in the digital dev space in the green buildings industry, then you know a lot about interoperability. That's one of the biggest challenges that we're having across all cities that we've been that Heart of New Earth has been working with. Then there's the organizational resilience and sustainability literature. These are just like research that is being released on a regular basis that you want to be mindful of so that you are updated on the sustainability assessment approaches that show gaps in dynamic resilience indicators. So just because you have all these like reports doesn't mean that you really want to be using every single one of them, but to take away what is helpful for your company, your materiality, especially if you're aligning your company to UN SDGs, the UN Sustainability Development Goals, and then inform the internal frameworks for assessing resilience with green building orgs. So you want to be comparing yourself to a couple of other places that have similar work. Especially if you're talking about resilience, you want to be creating these frameworks within your organizational structure for sustainability. So we're not just talking about resilience in the built environment, we're talking about resilience in your organization. the OECD Corporate Sustainability and Governance Factbook of 2025. Now, this is provides you with like really big policy frameworks underpinning sustainability governance. This provides the grounding in why governance matters at organizational and policy levels. So if you match also, like, again, you want to resonate it with your small organization, so or small, mid-size, and large organizations. It really depends on where you're at. And I know some of you are also in the international space. I saw, I think it's Mark, you're from Croatia. Glad to see an international in this room too. And, you know, just having this kind of framework then doesn't restrict you from saying, oh, I'm a US company or I'm a state company or, you know, whatever the case may be. You really want to be matching information to your organization. Now, finally, the corporate sustainability rankings, the S&P Global Yearbook. This benchmarks sustainability performance across industries and identifies leading sustainability performers. This benchmark can help set performance aspirations that you have for green building, whether it's with partners or, sorry, I just set my little like timer, whether it's, you know, for your partners to be talking about. But if you go to this website, and I'm happy to list this after my talk in the chat, if you go to the website, it'll have different industries. So for example, if you're in AEC, they actually break it down to like the engineering side, right? So engineering corporations in the global S&P, it's like, what are those benchmarks that they're doing and what are the best companies doing this? And then finally, again, as I said, appropriate fit. You know, you want to make sure that when you're doing your KPIs, you're filling your data gaps, but also that it meets your quality standards, and then not make it challenging or like, you know, if you're a small organization, don't go overboard with this. But having a framework of what is out there and how much do I want to scale, that allows you to actually understand to what extent you want to be growing and measuring your KPI against. I have a couple of other slides, but I know we're running low on time. So I'm going to hold it right there. And then you have a couple of other, you have the actual full slide available to you. And if you haven't seen it, it's in the chat box. Let me see, that Brett has shared. And in there, I talk a little bit about, you know, best practices, lessons learned from the Farm to Frame initiative, working with smaller organizations, because all the Michigan State organizations, iHemp Michigan, Native Cultivation, and Hemp for Humanity Foundation are all startup nonprofits. And so when we talk about from there to, you know, wanting to go global, it's really how do you within the organization hold that capacity and what kind of infrastructure do you want to be building into that? So that's where I will end. Thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yuko. So we're going to jump into sort of a Q&A kind of conversation here now to wrap up in the next 20 minutes. And we've got Cody coming back on, and then also Camila Outlaw, who I'm excited to see here from Elevate, who I've been working with indirectly on some initiatives in the city of Grand Rapids with their Equity Health Zero Carbon Initiative, if I'm saying that right, EH0. So yeah, great to have you on. And Cody, I guess I'll hand it to you to have the conversation with Cam here.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And Brett, feel free to chime in whenever. I think with all the presentations that we just saw, like you can kind of start to see how all these different organizations tie into the overall mission of community development and affordable housing and sustainability. And so definitely really grateful to have Camila with her experience to kind of see how it ties into real world applications in our state of Michigan with a leader in the space. Camila's a senior project manager for Elevate NP. And so definitely has a wealth of experience I would love to touch on. So I think, you know, let's start there. I guess, Camila, what inspired you to get into, you know, housing and community development? And I guess give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thank you, Cody. Good afternoon, morning for some others. My name is Camila Outlaw. I'm the senior project manager with Elevate. I am actually a Chicago native, and I have like an extensive background in public housing, property management. What piqued my interest there was just pretty much the housing insecurity in the city of Chicago, and wanting to not just be a landlord, but actually wanting to be a resource to the housing market.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess, going after tackling that housing insecurity problem early on in your career and in that journey, what were some of the lessons that you quickly started to see and learn?
So most of the lessons I learned was basically the quality of living, and just providing that quality of living for a lot of my tenants, and basically doing annual inspections are very important. General maintenance on a regular basis is very important. So I kind of model myself on just that regular maintenance. If owners, homeowners, or property managers can just keep up with the regular maintenance of the mechanics of the buildings and the properties, they can avoid a lot of the issues that we kind of incur. But we
Hmm.
understand sometimes, it's not affordable if you need a new roof,
Yeah.
and so that's why we run into that disparity in, the disinvested communities.
Yeah. Yeah. Building off that, I think that's huge. Like Alex touched on it in his presentation. I had a little piece on it too. Um, the affordability long term, like you said, like reducing maintenance.
Mhm.
I guess what little things have you seen or started to use in the industry that kind of like help lower maintenance costs? Like what are some common, and Brett, I'm sure you have some input as well with all the energy efficiency stuff that you're working with and certifications. So yeah, I guess is there anything specific that has been a big breakthrough in decreasing maintenance cost and increasing affordability in that long term?
So for me, as a former property manager, portfolio manager, and this is something that has been adapted more recent than not just, um, letting the tenants know, and they have like a filter program. Something as
Hmm.
simple as replacing your filters every 3 months. And we actually started to provide those filters for our tenants. And so I see that's something that's being, implemented throughout, more than just Chicago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean there's certainly some, when you're including more sustainable products, there could be some maintenance approaches to them that are different. Like if you're encouraging people to use better filters, those will cost a little bit more, but you change them less often, right? And that's
Right.
less opportunity to mess it up, right? If you're actually air sealing someone's home and then you need good ventilation, well, you do got to make sure that's cleaned out and maintained. So that's a little bit different, but not much different than people just letting their bath fans go until they, collapse. So, and if you're switching over to heat pump water heaters, which we need everyone to do, those need to be cleaned on the filters. So certainly, I don't want to be naive, uh, on some of those things. But of course, when people's homes are getting repaired and weatherized, hopefully that, increases the lifetime around the building shell, which is the really expensive and more or less do-it-yourself friendly. So,
Yeah.
And I
No, definitely.
feel, I'm sorry, the
Go ahead.
biggest approach here is education. If you educate homeowners and you educate the community, and provide that awareness of these things that they should be doing on a regular basis, by hosting community engagement events, just
Yeah.
to, how to, keep your home warm in the wintertime, doing the just a little, and I forget what they're called, when you put the weather stripping on the doors to prevent drafting, and even on the windows. So it's just the small things that become bigger long-term problems if you don't regularly maintain them or correct them.
That's good. So it sounds like, yeah, Elevate with the projects that you're managing across Illinois and Michigan. Um, yeah, can you talk a little bit about the projects and how education has made those they can use that tool to make these programs successful when we're talking about increasing energy efficiency or starting to develop workforce development pathways? What's Elevate's approach been on engaging the community and educating?
Yeah, so our approach is we really collaborate. We're really big on collaboration and partnerships with community-based organizations, local municipalities, and also state and federal. So
Yeah,
with those partnerships, especially within the community and our CBOs, it just affords us to like expand to the community. And with those community engagement events, it helps us understand the community needs instead of just assuming this is what this community needs. We
yeah,
actually get an insight on what their needs are specifically because each community has different needs.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's something that we're excited to learn. And that's like this whole first phase of FFI has been that goal. And like and that's why I'll I'll uh I'll plug the survey one more time. Like getting those surveys and collecting that data is so important with what we're trying to do so that we can really work closely with specific needs in different communities. And so that's really good to hear. And yeah, I guess getting into these communities, have you seen the connection between disinvested communities and the racial or economic inequity? Like how do those things go hand in hand? And what's the biggest thing that you're seeing right now that we can do to combat that?
So I feel like just working and I have a variety of projects that I work on. I work on affordable housing. We're doing the Detroit Contractor Accelerated work. We're like actually just got approved for the fourth round of funding for a fourth year.
Amazing.
So I'm excited about that. And then also I'm working on resiliency work with Wayne County. So how we incorporate that is when we have our programs, what we do is we've been training contractors, our own contractors, on solar and battery storage, electric vehicle charging stations and maintenance. And then we also incorporated and partnered with Slipstream. They had a program with the Heat Pump Collab. And so we encourage them to participate in all the free training that they can aside from what we provide, and then also get certification in those trainings. And so the goal is to build up a network of contractors so
Mm,
that once we complete our resiliency work and training, we'll have contractors to vet. They're getting training on and mentoring on how to bid and vet out these contracts.
absolutely. Yeah, that's the model that bringing these alternative building materials in is so important, getting contractors trained up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I guess just on that point, really quick, like what are the challenges that you see in Detroit? Let's talk about Detroit and the Contractor Accelerator program specifically. What have been some big obstacles in getting people trained up in the trades when we're talking about alternative or kind of newer things that we're trying to integrate into the housing side? Because I'm asking about Detroit specifically because I think there's an interesting challenge that Detroit represents with, the market in general, the real estate market, um, the housing stock and how we're trying to remodel it. And then also still have the access for people in Detroit and people in underserved communities to be able to own and live in those homes. So yeah, I'm curious on your experience with the Detroit Accelerator program. What have been some challenges trying to get to people and get them trained up in these newer, maybe more expensive methods?
Yeah. So that's a great question. We've had a combined cohort the last 3 years of 20 contractors. I would say the diversity of the contractors is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because we have contractors that are roofers, we have general contractors, we have electricians. So we're trying to engage all of the contractors and keep them engaged in our program specifically for their contractor needs. And one would say, well, why would you need a roofer in your contractor program? Well, who's going to put the solar on the roof? So I mean, it makes sense for, an electrician. But then we have like, our electric vehicle portion of the training, and where does the roofer fit in there? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just to keep it a little bit more comprehensive to the contractors, we try to let them know that this is what we'll be teaching. And even if you're not the one who does the work, you can also subcontract some of this work as well and
Right.
project management, manage it as well.
Yeah. And having that general knowledge and knowing the process and the protocol to do it is definitely necessary, even if you're subcontracting it out. So yeah, that's good. And so I guess yeah, after hearing everybody's presentation today and learning a little bit more about hempcrete, what what is your impression and view on how bio-based materials can start to work into this fold? Like, what are some things that excite you, and what are some things that you think like you got that's not going to work?
I'm excited to learn more about it, honestly. This is my first time hearing about this type of, architect for housing. So I'm very excited to hear more about it and possibly even have a presentation for our up and coming cohort
Mm,
um, for 2026. So I'm excited to hear more about it and learn more about it.
If I can just chime in there, I think that would be amazing because the uh, two things come to mind. We're talking about maybe more retrofits realistically in lots of cases. And for a US audience, just let people know that there is currently $1 billion retrofit project for social housing that's happening in France right now. And the second piece is that both Cody and I are on something called the Technical Advisory Group for NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Department. I forget exactly, but and they're looking at specifically for low carbon multi-family energy retrofits. And I like to talk about that in terms of healthy buildings because that's my background. But this balance between carbon, chemicals, first cost, longer term cost. Um, I think it's a holistic conversation that we're starting to connect all these dots. And I think the team would love the chance to present because for me to be able to share very clearly that this process going from designer to someone who learned a lot about, say, advanced building assemblies to now unlearning and relearning some of these details as I move into more contemporary natural building, that your contractors would probably be along that same line of thinking, well, this is the way I've done it for the last 10 years. Do I really need to learn something new? And then say, actually, we're evolving in our thinking about what was maybe the best way of doing something is actually a pretty harmful chemical, and we're trying to take those out of the building department or building stock because of the effect on indoor air quality, but also on community health.
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, great. We appreciate you, Camilla, for coming on and sharing your experience. And yeah, and Brett, if we want to open it up to any last questions for everybody on the panel and in the group, do we have any questions that we need to answer while we wrap things up in these last 5 minutes?
Yeah, please send those questions in. Before we get to those questions or as they're coming in, a reminder that for those of you who need your continuing ed in the future, not right now, please take your quiz with an 80% passing rate to receive your CEU on whatever platform you're on. For those of you who are here today and you've been here for the approved CEU hour, the full hour, you'll receive your certificates from certs at gutenbergcerts.com. Check your spam for that and you will receive it. And as those questions are coming in, as always, a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our executive director, Jose, Reina, and our nearly 500 members. We're so close, and we want to get to 500 by 2026 so we can go in the year strong. So if you haven't become a member yet, your job is to find some time over the holiday break and get signed up so we can hit that target. And a huge thanks to our sponsors who are helping us decarbonize and live greener, such as Panasonic Ventilation, Rheem for decarbonized water heater, Build Equinox, Tamarack, and Timber HP, who's also making decarbonized wood-based fiber insulations, similar to this effort here. So, well, I guess, Cody, I don't see a question, but uh, uh, I guess I just kind of want to come back to sort of the advocacy piece here, the piece that seems to be needed to really get this stuff done. And I'm wondering, is it sort of like people in their communities really doing this work and then reaching out to their elected officials, say, hey, come check this out, see how it benefits the farmers who are currently facing a lot of issues right now, as we know. And I don't think that will change, as people are watching this, unfortunately, in the future. I hope it does. And then, we have a housing shortage. Does this help us build faster? Like we answered all these questions, but is it like people in their communities educating, their policymakers like, hey, we're kind of really solving a lot of different issues here. And you should be aware of that. So you're, number one, not putting laws that get in our way, but then number two, put laws that get you out of our way. And then number three, we need incentives, right? We need incentives to do this. And so I guess, just kind of ending on the sort of call to action again, just where do people engage, I guess?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think first and
Mm,
foremost, call to action, those surveys, that helps us out tremendously in going into next year and actually trying to and
mm,
put these things into action. That data that we're collecting from the communities is a huge
mm,
metric that we need to collect. And
mm,
then I also put a link to a form in the chat if people want to get involved. Either as
mm,
a trainee, they want to learn more about farming, they want to learn
mm,
more about building, they want to invest or build with Hempcrete, they can put that information in there. And then overall, I think as in terms of advocacy and action, I
mm,
like to look at like what we're doing is like you said, changing systems or changing paradigms in how we construct and how we view housing. And I always like to reference the conditions of systems change, which at the core of it all
mm,
is mental models. And so I think that, having a different mindset when we think about housing and how we relate to our housing and how the housing relates to the environment, if we start to shift those and start to have conversations with each other in
mm,
our communities, and then like you said, with policymakers or municipalities, we can start to shift the different conditions of system change, which include, you
mm,
know, how resources are distributed, how are
mm,
different power dynamics existing in our communities,
mm,
and how are we practicing those
mm,
things in action,
mm,
coming together to build something better for the future. So I think it all just starts with, the
mm.
conversations, So like I said, I would love to have those conversations, fill out those
Yeah.
forms, our surveys, and we can start to really make stuff happen.
So I've got your website up here. I want to make sure I have it right. www.h4h.earth. Is
Yeah.
it right? And then number two, can people go there and find that survey for those watching it later?
Yeah, yeah. There's a contact form and a link to the survey
Okay.
on the website.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like I said, we put it in the chat. Let me know if anybody didn't see that or needs it. We can
Yeah.
make sure we get that to you.
Yeah.
One last thing that I'd like to just put on people's radar is that the U.S. Hemp Building Association did the work to get appendix, it's called Appendix BL, into the International Residential Code. But now there is an effort that's happening across the country to get that appendix adopted into state building codes because it's not that there are some states that auto adopt, but there are other states where you need to present. A group of us have presented to the California Building Standards Commission. I know there was a group in Texas, they do it more locally. So the group did it down in Austin, Texas, and got that approved. Minnesota, your neighbor, or near neighbor just recently approved hempcrete, and it didn't happen automatically. It was an effort. So people getting
Yeah.
engaged. I dropped in the chat,
Yeah.
reaching out to Laura. It says by
Yeah.
5 p.m. on December 24th. Just
Mm.
putting it on the agenda to make
Huh.
sure that they're considering, because I guess
Yeah.
there's some legal challenge to even adopting the 2024 codes. Again,
Yeah.
my mantra, turning challenge into opportunity. That pause
Yeah.
allows us to like maybe gather some more
Mhm.
folks and say, let's speak up and say this is important and this is
Yeah.
why.
Yeah, thank you
Um,
so much for pointing that out, Alex. And it is true. For those who don't know, there is no such thing as a National Federal Energy Code. Maybe for the worst, maybe for the best right now. But every state has to adopt those codes, and they all play a key role in adding in amendments. And so, hemp could be into that amendment. And as you stated right now, Alex, unfortunately in Michigan, our code is indefinitely on hold by a judge for eternity, apparently. So I'm sure that won't be the case, but now is the time to weigh in with these kinds of changes, and if your state's going through that same issue, I hope they're not. But it is that time to kind of say, can we get this right and make sure more sustainable technologies, more decarbonized technologies that are typically not considered get added in. So I appreciate, that perception, Alex, for those of you who are in this with us in Michigan. So we have to wrap up. We are at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And so we have to get going. Cody, Alex, Junko, Tony, Dave, Camila, I thank you so much. And Cody, for you, putting it all together and putting the vision out there together and sharing this and kind of putting a process forward for people to continue. Maybe, hopefully, we'll have you back to talk about some success stories here
Yes,
with
sir.
real projects. We'll have you back on the show. We're going to show that in Michigan. And Alex, I'd love to have you out and connect with you again later after this too on some of the stuff you're doing. So,
Yeah.
for those of you, I guess, yeah, we're at the end of end of the year here. We'll be connecting back again on January 7th for GHI 2026. So have a wonderful holiday season to all who celebrate, and Happy New Year to all who have a new year that starts on January 1st. So take care, be well, and goodbye.
Happy holidays. Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.